Since I'm fresh off the heels of my Pro 600 review, which is just short of top of the line from Profitec, it feels only fitting to take a look at their entry-level option. So this handsome-looking piece of coffee kit is the Go. It's a single-boiler, PID-controlled, compactly engineered home espresso machine. And regardless of its small stature, it's gained a lot of praise from fellow coffee lovers for its high level of performance and polish for a reasonable $950 price point, which puts the Go squarely between household names like the Gaggia Classic and Rancilio Silvia. So the question is, how does it measure up? Well, today I aim to answer that question, as well as cover the machine's notable features, performance, and the inevitable quirks and downsides. But as always, in the spirit of full disclosure, the folks over at Clive Coffee sent me the Go for this review, and of course agreed to my terms of no access to my draft or the contents of this video prior to full public release. But with all that out of the way, we're going to dive right into it after a quick word from this video's sponsor, Third Wave Water. When it comes to brewing the best coffee, the importance of water cannot be understated. I mean, purely by the numbers, it makes up to 98% of what's in your cup, and it's absolutely vital to the long-term reliability of your equipment. And that's why after months of testing and trials, I trust Third Wave Water in all of my owned and loaned coffee equipment. So not only is it formulated to not produce scale or cause corrosion, but there's an option for every palate. Third Wave Water offers a wide variety of mineral blends specifically designed to get the most out of your favorite roast level or brew type. So take control of one of the most important variables for brewing quality coffee and head over to thirdwavewater.com/Sprometheus or use code Sprometheus at checkout for 10% off your first purchase. Thanks to Third Wave Water for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back into it. Much like many of the home-focused machines in and around the Go's price range, it's overall very simple. Starting up top, you have a 2.8 liter water tank. That's more than enough to not need frequent refills. On its face, the controls are also very straightforward, with a brew, a steam, and a power switch. And each has a corresponding light, plus a nice satisfying click. And the knob, of course, controls the steam valve. Sitting dead center is the group head, which houses a 58mm commercial-sized portafilter, and sits just below the single 400ml brass boiler, adding to its overall temperature stability. And just below the group sits a large gauge that shows the pressure that's created through the machine's vibration pump. And of course, it wouldn't be a Profitec without their standard LCD display, which when on and at idle shows the current set brew temp, and also functions as a timer when the pump is engaged. On the display you can also change the brew temp, the steam temp, eco mode, which essentially just sets a time frame for the machine to go to sleep, the cleaning alarm that sets a number of brew cycles to remind you to backflush, and of course for those who live literally anywhere else in the world, you can change the temperature settings from Fahrenheit to Celsius. And finally, the full metal body, quality finish, and abundance of steel and brass internals makes for a machine that both looks and feels significantly more premium than most of the others in its same price range. Considering the Go's place in Profitec's lineup, its general point-and-shoot simplicity, and relatively small single boiler, it makes you wonder how it performs where it matters. Well, for starters, it heats up quick, and hits brew temps in about 4 to 5 minutes, but as I always recommend, if you've got the time you should let it sit for another 10 minutes or so, as this allows the portafilter and all the material around the group to get up to temp and assist with stability. But generally, I would say the group is pretty efficient, but I would like to see a bit lower of a water debit as it puts out over 300 milliliters in 30 seconds, which I think is why it doesn't really shower evenly across the screen as you'd expect, and more so consolidates into streams. When it comes to brewing on the go, there is no pre-infusion or pre-brewing, you just have straight pressure, but that isn't really a detriment, and it still produces very nicely extracted and tasty shots. And with direct external access to the overpressure valve, or OPV, you can easily toy around outside of the factory set 10 bar. But as I've come to experience, Profitec's OPV screws tend to have varied stopping points, with this one only able to go down to 7 bar, but regardless, it did make a positive impact on my extractions. Also, in comparison to the Silvia Pro X's soft infusion, I found the Go's standard ramp up and flat pressure more palatable across all roast levels, and the adjustment of pressure on the Go is much easier to do than changing the Gaggia's internal OPV spring. But beyond brew pressures alone, the shots I produced on the Go straight out of the box looked and tasted indistinguishable from the Pro 600, and in some cases better, with the lower pressures producing less punchy and smoother espressos from lighter roasted coffees. And when it comes to pulling shots back to back, the Go's small boiler does shut off about 20 degrees on average via the PID, but also bounces back quickly, often in 40 seconds to a minute. And finally, let's talk about steam, which I think is the only real sort of mixed bag when it comes to the Go's performance. Of course, as with most if not all single boiler espresso machines, the steam needs to be switched on either before or after you make espresso. And in terms of the time it takes to come up to temp, it is relatively quick, for me averaging around 25 to 30 seconds with the temp set to 275 degrees. Though that speed is sort of cancelled out when you follow Profitec's stated protocol of purging the wand for 2 5-second phases 10 seconds apart, which is intended to create more room in the boiler for steam. When it comes to usability, the wand itself has a pretty aggressive bend, so even with a good amount of movement, it can be awkward to find the right angle, and it makes deeper pitchers very difficult to use. But on the bright side, the steam knob does allow for more control of how the pressure is applied to the milk, which when using smaller pitchers, makes a difference in achieving the ideal, glossy textured microfoam. And finally, when you're ready to switch back to brewing, you can quickly purge the steam and additional heat out of the boiler, both on the wand and the group, in about a minute. Much like my recent review of the Pro 600, the Go's downsides are again byproducts of some of its more positive features. To start, of course, the machine is very compact, which definitely is a selling point for those with limited counter space. But as you'd probably guess, this means they've had to fit a lot into a small area. And this means the workspace below the group is pretty tight. It's only a hair over 3 inches when paired with the included spouted portafilter, and 4 if you opt for a bottomless. And lastly, as premium as the all-metal body is on Profitec's machines, the Go seems to suffer from some of the same issues. For one, it's got some sharp angles and corners, which if you're not careful, they can definitely catch or break the skin if they're hit just right. Also, with a vibration pump and little to buffer metal surfaces like the drip tray and tank lid, and considering it's a lighter machine overall, there can be a good amount of rattling going on during brewing, leading to a relatively noisy experience. So as I begin to wrap up my time with the Profitec Go, I can't help but be impressed. There really aren't any surprises. It's very much a plug-and-play brewing platform. And interestingly enough, I feel like the Go performs in terms of espresso just as good as the Pro 600, and really only falls short on its bigger brother's dual boiler steam power. Of course, it doesn't have the same aftermarket support as the extremely popular E61, or even the cult following of the Gaja Classic. But for those not looking to tinker, make a handful of milk drinks for impatient house guests, or spend twice the price for a little more steam, the Profitec Go doesn't feel like a compromise. And on that note, I think it's time I start wrapping this one up, and as always, pass the conversation on to you. What are your thoughts on the Profitec Go, and what are your thoughts on single boiler espresso machines? Do you think they often get the praise they're worthy of? And of course, if you're a longtime Go user, I'd love to hear your thoughts on its reliability, because a few months, as always, isn't enough for me to get a good take on that. So drop your answers to those questions and any others you may have in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that little bell button for notifications of new videos posted every Friday. Check out my Instagram at Sprometheus for content throughout the week. Help support the channel by considering becoming a member for exclusive access. And as always, stay caffeinated. Pony Boy.